Okay, so here is the case study analysis in competency. So what I've done is I'm going to walk through the case study that you have there in front of you, just kind of give you an idea of how your analysis should be set up when you look at the other three case studies and choose the one that you're going to analyze for this assignment. So the first thing to do really in this particular scenario is to go through the facts. So when you do your video or your summary, you're going to do about 1 to 2 minutes on the facts of the case. So for the case study example that I give you there, let's go through some of the facts that are relevant to this case study. So for this case study, there's a family. They have 2 daughters. One is 15 and one is 8 years old. The 15-year-old daughter has been diagnosed with leukemia. After a lot of testing and things that have gone on with the doctors and stuff, they have found that the sister, the 8-year-old sister, is a match for a bone marrow transplant that would help the sister through this particular disease challenge. Initially, the sister, the 8-year-old sister, is very excited to be able to help and assents to donating her bone marrow. But after they do some probing and they actually start talking about the process, it appears that she's not fully aware of what she's agreeing to, and so now there's some apprehension and uncertainty about whether or not her assent is going to be valid. So those are the facts of the case, so you want to be able to state that in your analysis. The relevant questions that need to be addressed, these are the questions that you find within the case that are of some importance that you're going to talk about when you analyze the case study. And so I found 3 in this particular one, and you may find others, but these are the 3 that for this case study that I would consider to be the concerns, and that is, are the parents acting in the best interests of both the children involved, and should the parents' decision be the final decision since Jessica is a minor? And then, of course, the third is Jessica able to give consent as a mature minor? And so that is one of those things that we have to talk about. What is a mature minor? How do we identify that? And things like that. So those would be your 3 most relevant questions. The next thing that you would do, of course, is to identify the stakeholders. And so who are the stakeholders in this case? And I think in this particular case, the stakeholders are the parents and the 2 daughters. There's no real societal concerns here. There's no societal implications, so you wouldn't really have to identify past that point. You could stretch it to maybe implications to the doctor, but that's kind of pushing it because he's just doing sort of a job in a way, and so there isn't really a long-term effect on this particular doctor here. But it could be there if you find something else that you feel is necessary. So those are your stakeholders, and so you want to make sure that you're identifying those clearly. And now the last part of this is the ethical considerations. What are the considerations, and how do they relate to our 4 principles of autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice? And so I'm going to walk through those in this particular case study. So if we talk about, definitely autonomy is the biggest ethical consideration here, because Jessica has to have some autonomy in her decision, whereas also the parents have to have some autonomy as well in making the decision that's right for the 15-year-old daughter. So there's definitely something there. Now Jessica is a minor, and so because of that, the parents are acting as proxies on her behalf, though she is cognizant to a degree. Now the thing about that is we talked a minute ago about mature minors, and whether or not Jessica falls into that kind of plays into her age for the most part. She is only 8 years old, and most of the time mature minor does not apply to an 8-year-old, and so more because they really still aren't completely exposed to things that go on. So in this case, seeing as that she's growing up in a very relatively what appears to be a normal family environment, that she is a normal 8-year-old and therefore would not fall into that mature consent. So, a mature minor, excuse me. So here is where we sort of run into some of that autonomy kind of stickiness. With the parents acting as proxy, they have done everything that they should do. If you look at it from an ethical standpoint, they have done all of the steps that are required to obtain consent, and they've talked to Jessica, and Jessica does want to do it and everything. So they've done everything they should do, and so they've given her as much autonomy as they feel that she can have, so they really haven't done anything wrong necessarily. The problem comes in to the fact that now after the probing and the idea that there's some pain involved in things, that Jessica is now kind of worried and now maybe doesn't know what she's getting into. And so we talk a little bit about the other three ethical considerations: beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. And we really have to look at, in the beneficence, this is not a situation where someone doesn't benefit. The 15-year-old daughter obviously is going to benefit. The parents are going to benefit. Jessica, in the long term, will probably benefit in the fact that it's minor pain. Nothing's really going to happen to her. So there is that idea there. But the idea maybe of no harm might be where you can sort of get into a little more detail here, where, the lifelong implications to Jessica may be a little bit something that we have to really consider. She has minor pain from the initial. She'll heal probably relatively quickly, but think if she doesn't do it, the long-term ramifications may be more of a concern, because maybe there's going to be depression when she realizes that she could have saved her sister, could have done something if she doesn't actually do it. The lifelong regret that might come sometime down the line when it was just such a minor concern to begin with. So Jessica herself may end up facing some other mental distress or something else that comes if she doesn't do it, and she isn't maybe right now at the age of 8 aware of what those implications are. So the non-maleficence and the justice component comes from, justifying to her what those long-term things are. So what could we do to maybe alleviate some of that is to do a better job as the parents, to do a better job of making sure she understands what she's going through, and just constantly give her as much information as you possibly can, so that she makes that decision with all informed knowledge, though the parents will get the final say as to that decision. So those are things to consider when talking about your case study. And then, obviously in your analysis, those are all the things I want you to look at. The rubric on the assignment has the specifics, the same thing that are in the PowerPoint, so that should help you. Just do a quick reference if you need. But I hope that helps for you to understand how you're going to analyze this particular case study, so that it ties back to our 4 basic ethical principles. And let me know if you have any questions.